Mobile hunters, the king of comfort has arrived. Go to tetherednation.com and check out the new Lockdown saddle. Over the past 2 years, Tethered has tested and refined a new approach to their saddle lineup. The Lockdown saddle takes the best-in-class features from the Phantom, like the UtiliBridge, comfort channels, and included an expandable saddle body with their Lockdown link construction to take saddle hunting to the next level of comfort. As if this wasn't enough, they developed Lockdown haulers, which has a slightly rigid internal frame structure, so you can easily unzip, zip, and access haulers with one hand. And if you're a guy like me with no junk in your trunk and have issues with your saddle staying put while you're walking in to hunt, the Lockdown modular yoke solves this problem. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I have on, it's a little late for the annual. Usually we do this a little earlier, but I have on the person I like to refer to as the Exodus Killer, Mr. Jake Hofer. What's going on, man?
There's a handful in Exodus, so I don't know if I earned that, but I'm doing really well, and I appreciate this. And I think this might be more fun because instead of just sharing a bunch of hot gas, I can actually have some great stories to share of what happened. And it's funny because a lot of the things we would have talked about are things that I implemented and it worked out this year, so it was pretty fun.
Right. That's awesome, man. Well, it's the running joke, or I don't know if it's still the running joke. I just remember it. It was years consistently that you were the only guy in the office that was killing deer, like every single year, and like. And it was kind of the running joke that Jake was the quiet killer because you don't say much about, like, you'll get like one Instagram post on it, you know what I mean? Like, and then it's like nothing more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
It is funny. I always think that I should post and share more on Instagram, and I'm like, I really don't, whatever. And I go back and look, it's like, man, the only time I post is in November.
It is, yeah.
I never post any other time. Yeah.
Well, you've posted a few other times since you've bought the farms that you have, right? Because you've done some work and stuff like that, but it's, I wouldn't go as far as to say that you're a heavy poster.
No, well, I got a podcast. I got the land. If you really want to know what I'm doing, you can listen to that. And I share a lot there. So, yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well, before we jump into like all the hunting stuff, man, how you been? Things good? Everything good on the Exodus side? I saw the boys when I was on my way out to Kansas. I stopped into the headquarters, spent the night in the parking lot in the trailer, and worked from there with the crew. Then went out to lunch with Chad, Jace, and Cam, and then of course I saw Cam while we were in Kansas. But how's everything with the crew?
Good, man. Good. Yeah, this year's freaking flown by. It's crazy. The years go faster, and I can't believe that, X has been around for 8 years, and I've been there for, I think this would almost be 7 years I've been there. So it's gone really fast, and it's been really fun, and things are good. I was really looking forward to this season. I had an Iowa tag in my pocket, and, felt that this was going to be a good year, whether that's that's just how I felt going into this season, and it turned out to be, pretty solid so far.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So, because last year, you put in for Iowa last year too, right? Because the plan originally was for, because I know Cam went and Chad went, and, it's also kind of the running joke, like Jake never gets tags, like in time. Like
I never draw. I remember 2 years, maybe it was 3 years ago, Kansas, I was going to go hang out with Jason Michael, and he's just like, yeah, everyone always draws. This isn't a problem. Yeah. I didn't draw. And he's like, and there was, that was right when the point creep of Kansas started. And then I was going to try to draw in Iowa. It would have been 2 years. It was an easier draw unit. And they're like, I had, I think, 3 points. Like, yeah, you should draw. Didn't draw. Okay, I'm going to try to draw the higher end zone. Didn't draw. And then I was like, well, and then I drew it with 5 points, but I know there's some folks that drew that didn't have 5 points. So I actually did get lucky this year. So I'm not, right. Yeah, I'm super excited for that. But man, the point creep across everything, whether it's real. People wonder, do people that do content really make an impact? Are they just sharing their opinion because they like themselves? No, I think we can say the point creep. I think we can say a lot of the different things that happen. There's a clear impact with what's going on. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Like I know, I drew Kansas a couple times. Actually, the last 2 times with no points. Very lucky. I feel like though, because I had heard from guys who didn't draw, that didn't have any points. They were just putting in, and if they could draw, awesome, they would go. And if not, they would go somewhere else or whatever. But they had also killed
like the year prior or whatever. So I don't know if there's some like, even though it's a lottery, I don't know if there's like some weighting where it's like, okay, you have a point, so like you're pretty much guaranteed, right? Or you have no points, but you've not killed, right? And so we give you a better probability of getting your tag versus a person who has no points and has killed, right?
Right.
Because it seemed like there was like, and I might just be making this up, but it felt like a lot of the guys I was talking to that had killed there and didn't have points weren't drawing, and guys who didn't have any points but hadn't killed there were drawing.
Interesting.
You know,
I wonder if that's interesting. I wonder if it is a coincidence or if it goes into their drawing algorithm, whatever that is. Maybe that's proprietary.
It might be proprietary, you know. Yeah, but it's I'm trying to decide, you know, because it's crazy. I was just texting Chad earlier this week. We played phone tag and haven't been able to talk to each other, but because I was like, man, it's crazy. You got to already start planning out your year like right now, like for next year, because Idaho opens December 1st, right? And that's just like a straight first come first serve, you know, situation for the most part. And I'm trying to decide if I'm going to Idaho next year, which my buddy Wilson has like found a bunch of elk, like in a very hard place to find elk. He had 2 really good encounters and should have filled his tag twice at this point. Like, you know, I'm not going to tell his story. I'll have him on some point. He can tell you know, the story as to what happened. But he's in a really hard area to find elk in Idaho, in that Coeur d'Alene kind of area. So it's not like southern Idaho. It's just, you know, mountain ground and stuff like that. And so for a new guy, he's found like an area that has multiple herds. And just talking to guys from out there, they're like, that's not heard of very often in this particular area. Like they're usually very spread out. The herd's not super, super strong. Like it's getting better than it's been in the past. But he's had encounters with bulls, I think 6 different bulls, and not like satellite bulls, but like 6 different herd bulls for that area, which is just bananas, you know? So he's like, you need to come back out. Cause the first year I went out there was like his first year elk hunting out there. And so we found elk, but it's just like, we weren't in the game enough to like really kill one, except for maybe one day. In this area that he's kind of found, he's like, dude, he's like, I'm in elk to where I could have a kill opportunity almost every time I went in if I saw the bull that I wanted to go after, you know? So I'm not going to blow up his spot because it's like he turned me on to a friend of his that I've kind of become friends with, this guy, Jake Hofer. And I was talking to him when I was driving home from Kansas, and he was just like, dude, he's like, I've lived here all my life. He's like, and I've never seen a spot like that, you know? Yeah. And I was like, that's crazy. He's like, so yeah, he's like, if you could get your tag next year, he's like, you're going to have a lot of fun in there. And I was like, sweet.
Yeah, you definitely should do that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so I'm trying to talk to Chad to figure out like, what are we doing next year? Like, we trying to draw Kansas because he's got a point, I don't. So one of us may or may not draw, right? It's like, and I know you guys are hunting West Virginia next year. And I'm trying to decide if I'm going to Idaho or not, because if I do try to draw Kansas, I want the 2 weeks to go back out because I love it out there. If not, then I'm cool with doing like a week in Missouri, you know what I mean? Or something like that. And so, yeah, it's like, this is the time of year. Usually I'm worried about trying to kill a deer. Right now I'm trying to figure out where next year
That's a good feeling, man. Yeah, that's a good feeling. You're going to be multiple steps ahead for next year just for that reason right there.
But speaking of killing deer, man, so you had that Iowa tag, right? So when you find, like, I remember when I drew the Iowa tag, it was almost like my birthday or Christmas, you know what I mean? Dude. Where it was just like, there's like a feeling about it where it's like anything can happen, you know? So how did you feel like when you got the tag?
My wife and I went out to dinner to celebrate. We don't go out to eat much. I mean, if that tells you how excited I was like, we're going to dinner. Where do you want to go?
Baby, put on the good jeans. We're going to dinner.
Sunday best right now. No, so I mean, when I drew that tag, I was so excited. I mean, I was truly, really pumped. And I think it's a lot of it's just the build up, the anticipation. And then really, in reality, it all worked out. I'm kind of glad I didn't draw whatever it was the first time I put in, and I'm even happier I didn't draw last year because I mean it all worked out, and that was kind of what I was hoping for. I mean, obviously we never know how things are going to unfold, but I was just like, well, let's just roll with the punches, go with the tide, and it's going to work out. And so yeah, I became really good friends with Steve Hansen. He's out in Iowa, and when I put in for last year, I was going to hunt with him, and then it all kind of worked out. He ended up purchasing a farm with a partner quite a ways from his little core area, and so it was a farm that they probably weren't going to hunt much, and you know, I think they bought that in early spring, and then I mean, at this point, I've hunted it and scouted it more than he has. I mean, that tells you how generous he has been. I mean, he's been an exceptional resource. And so we went out and we summer scouted it, and we hung a bunch of cameras. My buddy Richard came out. We filmed some content. And it was just a giant CRP farm with a couple ditches. I'm like, I love this because this is kind of predictable. This is you can see far, you can read sign really easily. Yes, they could bed anywhere in the CRP, but more than likely this edge is very defined, and you don't have to be a deer genius to break it down, which is perfect for me. And and so we hung a bunch of cameras, and we found some really good deer. And my goal going into this year for Iowa was to kill something that is mature and heavy, like heavy mass is what I really want to do, over 150 if I had to, make that mark. And so, there was a handful of bucks that were in that running. And it's kind of weird out there. It was I would say, an excellent neighborhood is what I would say. I mean, it was not just a random area. I mean, it was a good area. And, a lot of those deer from summer, the shift is so much different. And a lot of those deer disappeared. I was like, man, and this is something that I think a lot of people fall into, that summer false hope or summer deception of bucks, because I get, they're probably going to be back at some point, hopefully. But a lot of the deer you end up killing, you don't necessarily have velvet pictures of, or at least that's how it's been for me in the Midwest. And so the deer I ended up killing, we did not have a velvet picture of that I'm aware of. And so I went out there first cold front, passed some really nice deer, went out there again for 9 days, and just had a bunch of fun. I mean, it was just great. It was just so much fun.
It's such a blast. Because I remember, so you've asked me before on the Exodus podcast, I don't know if you remember asking me this question or not. You asked me if I could only hunt one. I forget exactly how you phrased it, but you said something like, if you could only ever hunt one place, right, where would you hunt, the rest of your life or whatever? Or what is your favorite place to hunt? Might have been like the thing that you asked me. Yeah. And I had always said to you, Kansas for the experience, because I just like that style of like glassing, spotting, stalking, like that kind of approach. But I said for deer behavior and watching deer and being in the hunt, right, that it was, I have no clue why those balloons keep popping up.
See that? It's your birthday.
I don't know if the people are going to see this on the video when it comes out, but it happened in the last one I did, so I have no clue what's happening. So for people that are listening, balloons just came across the video like it was my birthday or there was a congratulations or something. But I always said to you that it was Iowa was like getting a master's degree in deer behavior, just because you see so many mature bucks. It's so consistent. The parade is a strong word, but if you are even, I will say even if you're like a average deer hunter, right? And you go out there and you kind of know what you're looking for in setups and stuff like that. You're going to have, I won't guarantee that you're going to have bow range encounters with mature deer necessarily, but you're going to see plenty of them, So after so whenever you were out there having that experience, does that kind of ring true to you as far as what you visually got to see?
So much fun. Yeah. There wasn't a day I didn't see a deer over 130 inches, for example. I mean, it was, I didn't journal or anything, but I would say that would not be an exaggeration at all. And, during that 8 or 9 day stretch, I passed some really solid deer, mid 40 type deer. And I was like, well, I don't think, that's not what I came here for. And, I just staying in touch with a lot of close friends are you're kind of crazy. And then I have my other, I would say closer friends, hell yeah, stay true to what you're going for. And so that was fun. And it was just so much fun because that farm, I would say it didn't hunt very big for how big it was, but you were able to bounce around and then, hung some sets where you could just see forever. And it was just it was great. And it was interesting too, because we had anticipations from the summer of where we thought the best sign would be, or the better part of the farm. And it was very weird because as the farm went from west to east, the sign got worse. It's very weird. The west side had so much red hot sign, very good. And then the east looks very similar and even has more connecting habitat to what you think it would look really great. And you go over there and it's where's the scrapes? Where's the rubs? What the heck's going on over here? And that was kind of interesting. But those deer travel through the whole area. So I think it was just a congregation of where, because there wasn't a lot of doe families on this farm. I would say there's probably 2, maybe 3. And I think that the bulk of the does lived on the western part. Yeah. And so there was, a little bit more ag. There's corn on that side. So yeah, so that was something that I just kind of figured out. But I mean, a lot of it was just bouncing around. In the summer, we, dropped some pins where we wanted to hang tree stands, and kind of each trip just hang a set, hunt it, and then have one there, and then just kind of bounced around as well. So, I mean, it was just a lot of fun. We had really good weather, and I think it was the 28th. This was the first. Oh, that's a big Iowa deer. That was my first time on the 28th.
Give me your experience of that, because I remember when I was out there, and like it was a little different for me because, when I went to Iowa, I had previously hunted Ohio, killed a decent Ohio buck. I had hunted Missouri and I saw a big Missouri deer that was probably in the 50s, right? And then I hit one that wasn't of the same caliber, but just like body size, right? Like I was looking at these deer, and I thought I knew like what big deer kind of looked like, not antler wise necessarily, right? But just like body wise, right? And I remember going to Iowa, and whenever I saw the first like Iowa experience, and as soon as I saw him, I knew that was like, I was like, that's like a 180-inch deer. You know what I mean? Like where he was just like, his body was just gigantic, and I jumped him out of like
of mature.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Where it was like, I think I was about 60 yards from him, and I jumped him out of this like draw that was in this CRP field, and it was just a stupid mistake. Like I really had never hunted the ground before, and from the ground before, like consistently, and so that was attempting that in this kind of area, and I just screwed it up 3 ways to Sunday. Every way you could screw it up, I screwed it up. And so that deer jumps out and just takes off, and I remember just being like, oh my God, like that's a different animal. You know what I mean? Like,
truly.
And so I remember it stuck with me. Like I can vividly remember that. And that was my first like Iowa. Yeah, dude. It was like my first Iowa. Like that was, even if I didn't kill a deer that year, I was like, that's what I came here for, to see that. Yep. You know what I mean? And so tell me about the first time like you had that. Cause I mean, you hunt the Midwest, man. You're from Illinois. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, and so it's not like you're one state away.
But it's a world of difference. I will be the first to tell you that. I mean, I would tell you this: my time in Iowa, I saw probably 3 years. 2 to 3 years worth of bucks in my 10, 11 days of Iowa of Illinois. And maybe that's just whatever. That's just the fact of it. But anyways, it was the 28th, and I passed the evening before. I passed like a low mid 140 type deer. And then the 28th, it was really cold, and it was just like everything there. And I was bundled up. I had a beanie on, and I was set up in a saddle. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I heard a grunt. And then it was from behind me. And I turn around, and I see it, boom. right on a doe just going across the CRP. And I was like, all right, well, that's what we're here for. There's definitely one here now.
Nice. And, what would you gauge? What would you gauge that one at?
Like this is 60s type deer, 60s, of just like a mature, big, tall frame deer. Like nothing ginormous, but one that doesn't take a second look of, well, I don't know.
right. There's no consternation over that.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
So that was really fun. And he was on a doe, and just dogging like crazy. And then so I think it was the 20. It was kind of, I don't want to say it was slow, but just past some. It was just kind of seeing some solid deer. And then it was the 31st Halloween night. That was when I passed another really solid deer. And that was a pretty cool experience. The deer ended up bedding down 35 yards from me, and I'm in the saddle, and I'm in this tiny little walnut, and the deer is just looking, my direction the entire time. So I'm frozen there, and he's there for a half hour. And that was a deer that I had to spend some time actually thinking. It was a 9 point. If he was a 10, I probably would have shot him. And it was just like, I don't know. And I just thought to myself, if I have to take a half an hour to think if I want to shoot this deer, that's not the deer I want to shoot in Iowa.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was, but I was like, man, but this is literally my inner dialogue. But it's October. It's Halloween. Halloween buck be pretty cool. It's like, I'm like, no, that's stupid. I have one tag in Iowa. I don't care if I kill him on Halloween or I kill him on freaking Christmas. I don't care. So I ended up, it was just a fun experience and watching them. And then spent a couple more days, and I felt like at that point I was kind of starting to feel the pressure on the farm that I was putting on. I mean, I was pounding it. And so I hunted November 3rd in the morning. Meanwhile, in
so
Illinois,
this is really kind of interesting. Like I'm following along with you, right? Even though I was out hunting, right? It's like I was kind of always checking like your Instagram and stuff like that because I knew you were in Iowa when I was trying to see, like, obviously cheering for you from the sidelines, right?
Sure,
like, wanting you to kill a good deer. And I'm watching, and then I all of a sudden, I saw the post from Illinois, but after I saw that, I was like, dude, he's crazy. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, so before we jump to that though, I want to ask you this one question. Like, so Iowa is, kind of like the Mecca, right? We'll just refer to it as that for deer hunting, right? Some people like different places a little bit better, but the general consensus is like, if you're going to get one tag and one tag only, like the Iowa tag is the one you want to at least have once in your life. Yep. And, but it's not all, cookies, cream, and rainbows necessarily, right? Like it's still hunting, right? And there's still free range animals. So there's not a 180 around every tree, and they don't just walk up to your tree and say, shoot me,
Yep.
So I'm curious, like what, there's always like unique challenges, like with every hunt, especially when you're hunting a place that like isn't like your home spot that like you've spent like 5 years hunting and like every nook and cranny of it and stuff like that. And you spent plenty of time scouting, you ran trail cameras and stuff like that. But like when you look back on it, what were some of the unique challenges that maybe you didn't anticipate that you ran into during the hunt?
That's an excellent question. I would say, there was some as it got later into when does were sick of getting harassed on food, things became a little bit more unpredictable and a little bit more challenging. I would say that was something. That's going to be like that basically anywhere. I would say the access on this farm it was solid. It was okay, but it wasn't amazing. I would say that was probably one of the biggest things where I felt like, okay, I need to give this place a quick breather because I have to get to where I want to go or where I was spending some time. Like I just have to go through too much. And I just know this is my favorite when people are like, I got in clean. I didn't bump any deer. I'm perfect. Dude, you bumped some deer. Yeah. You bumped some deer. They saw you. Maybe you might not have heard them or seen them. And, and I guess I'm referencing that to how much ground I had to cover. Like I was, there was a application of pressure each time. And so I say that would be one of the challenges, but that's going to be, anywhere. I would say the biggest thing was just it was hard to find that deer that I wanted to kill at one point. So the deer I ended up killing in Iowa, we got on camera the 22nd of October. And I was like, that deer, like the one I saw on the 28th, that was one I would shoot. And then the one on the 22nd, that was one I would shoot. The 22nd, the one I ended up shooting, that was the one I wanted to shoot the most. And so that was kind of this finding a deer, because I think people think, oh, you're on a farm in Iowa, like every farm has a 160 or every farm has a 150. And I think I've talked to a lot of people, and I know that's not true. Obviously there's some magical farms out there, but it's not really magic because so much work and management and time and money goes into that. So I would say that was one thing of just not automatically assuming that there's a booner on every farm. And that's just a fact.
Yeah, and out there it's that misconception of like, there's a giant on every, like there could be, because that's a place where like magic can happen for sure, because you're in the right geographic location. The caliber of deer that are just like mind blowing do exist there, but unless you're on, like, to your point, like those farms that are like those magical farms that you refer to, like, yes, they do exist out there. And to your point, like people put a ton of time into those to make them magical. It doesn't just happen. It's not like you buy a chunk of ground in Iowa and like all of a sudden a bunch of 180-inch deer show up. Like that doesn't, that doesn't happen.
Because I know a lot of people that own a lot of ground, and they're not all. This is one of my favorite comments I see online. I could do that too if I had 500 acres, or I had. Dude, are you sure? Because there's a lot of people that have 500 acres or 400 acres or whatever the number is in your mind that don't. There's a lot of them that don't. And then there's a handful group that do, and it's because they understand A to Z how to handle the farm.
Right. And even if you have that acreage in like the best neighborhood, right? Like, and I'm not saying adjacent to some of those magical farms, because you could buy a farm and you get lucky and you're adjacent to like one of those magical farms. Like, you're going to have some leakers. You know what I mean? That are going to end up on your property at some point. But even if you're just in the right neighborhood and you're not in like adjacent to those farms, it's like chances of you having like that giant caliber deer on your farm year in and year out, like consistently, to where you could actually hunt him and not count on him just like passing through at some point. Sure. Right. And like you just being at the right place at the right time. Like it's still it's still not super high odds because like, you know, I think about like the public that I hunted out there, and a lot of the caliber of deer that I was seeing while I was hunting out there was oftentimes the same caliber of deer for people who I knew who had access to farms or had a lease or whatever the case was out there. So there wasn't like a huge discrepancy. What they do have though is they can control the pressure to a degree, right? They can control like how much impact the deer have, like how much food is there and things like that, which certainly helps you have like more predictability. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the only thing in my mind, if it's just an average farm in Iowa, like they can manage the predictability. They're not managing really at that point yet for caliber, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting, man. Access, that's always, especially on a new farm, is always tough, right? It's like, you know, or just a new piece in general. It's like, because you're trying to figure out, like, am I screwing it up while you're screwing it up? You know?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's the best way to put it, because it is challenging. It's like you got to be in the game, but you don't want to, there's that can be a great limiting factor. And so I would say that's the biggest thing. But other than that, I think it was just, I think sometimes, and maybe this is dependent on what you're hunting and everything else, but dude, like day 9, I was still fresh as day 1. I mean, so I'm not even that, like, I can truly say that I wasn't, and I had to drive an hour and 20 minutes each way to the farm. I was good, man. I was just like, we're here. This is what I'm doing. This is one of the most important things in my life right now, and so this is what I'm focused on, and everything else can kick rocks. Like, it doesn't matter. And so I think that was fun, just because a lot of the last deer season was challenging. It's because I was trying to wear too many hats. And I felt like I was just hunting to hunt, but I wasn't actually hunting, if that makes sense. I was just going. And so that this year is like, I changed my voicemail, changed my email signature, like, I'm hunting and anything else does not matter. And I had so much fun and it was so enjoyable. And I think that moving forward is something that I'll just have to continue to do for as long as I can, because that made a huge difference just from an enjoyment level.
Yeah, 100%. All right, awesome. So now you did the crazy thing, which is like, you're in Iowa, you're on a farm, you're seeing good bucks, right? Like you're seeing, at minimum fun deer to watch every day, right? And you've had a visual of like what you came there for, and then you got some trail camera intel on one where you're like, yep, I would kill that one, And then you're like, I'm gonna go back to Illinois today. You know what I mean? I'm going to go hunt Illinois, which, seems crazy to anybody who, lives in PA and has an Iowa tag. Like, I would never be out there and be like, yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to PA and catch this cold front real quick. You know what I mean? Like, never in a million years, But, that was a decision that you made. You had some good, and this is what I like about the way you hunt. And just, you and Chad, hunt this way, where it's like, you guys are interested in like the best dates, right? Like, I'm going to go hunt the best dates wherever they're at, within reason, right? It's like, you're not going to drive 20 hours and be like, the weather sucks here, I'm going 20 hours back, east. But like, if it's possible, it's like you're chasing the best, like, optimal days, like wherever they happen to be, where you have a tag, right? And, that's something that, I've tried to do more of, even just, in PA, is just like try to chase those best weather days or best opportunities, right? And so when you think about it that way, it doesn't make that, it's not as crazy. But talk to me about like the thought process when you're like, yeah, I'm going to dip back to Illinois and ditch the farm for a little bit. Yeah, well, in the world of cell cameras, I was getting a lot of intel, and I felt with some of the pressure I was applying to that farm, and this is just my perception. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but that's what my gut said, and I was like, okay, I need to give this place a quick cool off, and before things really bust loose, I feel like I can go kill a buck in Illinois in like 2 days. I felt so confident that I was going to kill a deer. And don't you love that, dude? Yeah, I was like, if I don't kill one tonight, I'm going to kill one tomorrow morning. And I haven't even thought of a plan beyond that, because I'm so confident it's going to happen. Dude, but whenever that happens, though, man, and when you're dead set dialed in, like, that's when it happens. Like, when there's no other, like, it's like whenever you go into business, it's like when you dip your toe in, it's like you always have one toe out or 1 foot out. You know what I mean? But like whenever you pull the ripcord and you're like, it's this or it's sink or swim, you figure out a way to swim. You know what I mean? Yeah. Kind of the same way in deer hunting. Like, if you chip away around the edges and you're like, maybe I'll kill something. It's like, well, probably not, man. But when you jump in and you're like, it's happening today or tomorrow, or I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. You figure out a way. Yeah, 100%. And so that was, I was in the stand in the morning, November 3rd of Iowa, which November 3rd is one of my favorite days, no matter what. And so I actually went and hunted a different farm that morning, which was a great farm. And I just like, man,
feel so confident. I'm not saying I'm going to kill a giant, but I know I can kill a target buck in Illinois in 2 days. Like,
right.
I'm going to do that. And so that was right when this warm front was starting to roll into, and I was like, if I'm going to spend warm days, you know, in my mind, I was like, I'd rather spend warm days in Iowa because, there's probably a higher likelihood. But that's besides the point, because my gut feeling just felt like, okay, go back to Illinois. Let's go throw 2 days at it, see what happens. Feel like I'm going to knock one down. And so I was in the tree stand. I was Google mapping. Okay, if I leave at 10 o'clock and I drive straight through, I'll be able to get to the farm at 2:30 to be set up at 2:45 or 3 o'clock. And so that's exactly what I did. And I literally just drove straight there, parked, walked up. And so this farm did a lot of work this past summer. And it was a lot of the work that the first time I ever walked it, and then the first season. So this would be the 3rd season we've had it. And it was all the projects that I knew, like, we need to do this. And whether it was just because I was too tight or whatever the case may be, I was like, it just became a point. Like, and a lot of this is some things I've learned through the land podcast or learned from, everyone I've talked to, where a lot of these guys who are really successful, they don't wait the 2 years. Like, they know the projects and they just do them because they've also done, many more times. And so that was something, just being around that and seeing that work for other people. I was like, okay, we're just going to do it. This is what needs to happen.
So what was some of the projects that you did that kind of facilitated this? Because just you killed a good buck last year on the farm that you bought that was your great grandparents' farm.
I struck out last year. That was the first year I hadn't killed a buck in a long time. So
2 years.
But yeah. So I bought one off where I live, and then I bought 2 farms in 21. The farm where I shot my deer this year, that was the very first farm ever, and then I bought the other one right after that one, which is just kind of a weird, crazy story anyways. But so yeah, that's, this was another added layer, which I know there's a lot of different types of deer hunters and different things. Like, I have respect for everyone's strategy, but there is something indescribable of killing a deer off dirt that you worked your ass off for. That you saved up every money, you made all the sacrifices, you drove a crappy car, you had guys call you stupid, you're crazy, what are you doing? There's just something that goes along with that, a level of I guess gratitude for yourself of like, hey, we did this. Like, no one handed this. We worked really hard. We did it. So I know there's this stigma of owning private ground, but man, I've worked really hard to do that, and I'm really proud of it too. So
I just want
to, so to share that. And so, this is mainly a timber track that was cut heavily before we bought it, and that was part of the reasons part of the reason I could afford it.
Right.
So,
timber value was down.
Yeah, for sure. But so one of the projects was to add in a new food plot on the other side of the farm, and to basically add a food plot, put in a blind, hunt that side of the farm, and get some deer bedded closer. And there's just a lot of contours to this farm, which make things a little bit more predictable. The other project was, when we bought it, there was a blind on it. And, it was like the blind, it was the typical, there's a blind on here so we can put it on the listing, but it's really not,
right.
There was not much thought here. And so where it was, you had to walk, I never even hunted out of it because I thought it was just dumb, because you had to walk through the entire food plot, the road access to it. You had to walk through a south-facing slope where the deer are going to be bedded on both knobs as you walk up. Like, this is so dumb. Like, it's just not going to work. So it ended up dozing in another road on the backside. So it would be right off the road. You can just shoot straight up. And then I've actually put in a Y. And so there was this road to where you could drive equipment up if you wanted to. And then another little road just to literally walk straight up the blind, like right up the back steps. No set, no foot, no, like, they're not going to cut your track, period.
Right.
And so that was the big thing, and we moved that blind to where it was right in a pinch, and any deer that's going to come through this food plot is going to be at 15, 20 yards. Easy. Right. And so I hadn't even hunted this new setup yet. I went in, I think it was October, I added a couple more cell cameras, and then this is a Scott Buckley trick. You paint acrylic black paint on the windows, and then you just end up peeling it off. So I went in there and I painted all the windows one day, and so that was it. So drove to Iowa, got in the blind, used my fingernail, scratch off the corners of the blind, just look left, right, and just wait for it to happen. Man, I hate hunting out of a blind, I really do.
Yeah.
But it was the only way you could effectively hunt that spot, and it's a good spot. Right. And so November 3rd on this farm in that area, since I've had it, has always been good. I mean, I would say almost exceptional. And so that was going into the factor of, okay, there's been one buck for sure I would shoot using this somewhat. And then the deer I ended up killing, I had a couple velvet pictures of, and then literally just a couple in October. And it was on the other side of the farm. And so I'm just standing there looking left, right, just waiting for something to happen. And sure enough, I see him, getting ready to read the script perfectly. And I just instantly saw him. I'm like, okay, he's got a big frame. Okay, he's got a sticker on the G2. I was like, kind of go back because there's too many deer to keep track of between Iowa because I'm like, I almost needed the quarterback flip book of like, okay,
nice.
This farm, this deer.
Banana Y, blah blah blah. That's like
Wildcat.
Awesome.
All right, and so, it's kind of a short story. Like he literally just worked through and shot him, and that was the end of it. But it was, that's what the story is. What some people will hear, but the other story is this summer of putting together a strategy. Number 2, staying out of it and not hunting it prematurely, and then timing it right based off of historical data. And so, yes, it was one sit and it was a couple hours, but there's a lot that went into that
beforehand. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I mean, it's those one sit kind of hunts or whatever. People don't see like all the. Or just short seasons. Like I had one this year. It's like I filled both tags, right? PA and Kansas, and I had 5 hunts. Yeah. 5 hunts total. It's crazy. What I mean? Like I hunted 5 days, full stop. And those 5 days didn't even include. 2 of them weren't even in areas where I killed the deer. Like they were like in like areas that were like hours away from my house and like in a different state.
Yeah.
And so like if you broke it down, it's like that piece in PA I hunted. That was the first sit. And then in Kansas, it was like one sit, observation, glass, kill them the next day. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
Like, so it's like, it's the shortest season I've ever had. But to your point, like what people don't see is like the 2 years that it took me to figure Kansas out, the 2 seasons that I've spent out there, which was like a total of like 3 weeks that I've been out there. Right. Or like the multiple years that I've hunted and scouted this particular area that I killed this buck, that it took me 2 seasons and screwing up on 2 different deer to actually get it done, to figure out how I needed to hunt it. And to your point, it's like all the work that had to happen, like move the blind, do the habitat work, bring a dozer in, like, and that's the thing that like kind of makes me mad,
put
right?
In the food plot, put in the fertilizer.
Yeah.
It all takes time and money. That's the thing that people don't realize.
Right. And it's like, and that's the thing I think that disappoints me is like when people discount, like what you said earlier, like if I had access to a farm, it's like, would you be willing to do all that to make that happen?
Yeah.
Like that's the question, right?
And some may, and then this is the other thing too, and this is something that I've seen and this kind of observed as well, is, someone buys a farm and old grandma owned it forever. No one really hunted it. And there's a really good age class. Okay. First year. Oh man, we killed 2 bombers off this farm. Oh man, that's awesome. Second year, we killed one pretty good bomber. Yeah, he was pretty good. And the third year, we shot some nice bucks. And you can just like
watch it go down.
That's the behavior of it making it worse. And that's where it's like a lot of the first year farm, like depending on the area, like that could be the best year because you start becoming the limiting factor, whether people want to admit it or not. And I've seen that happen a lot, and it's a hard pill for people to swallow because. Would you kill the 4-year-olds or you kill whatever? Like they're gone. You can't kill a 5-year-old in 1 year. And so I think people maybe sometimes overestimate their maybe self-control strategy and everything else, or how hard it is to really hold and grow mature deer. I haven't figured it out to the degree a lot of people have, and I think it's hard, man. It's hard no matter how you do it. Whether you hunt public and you drive 8 hours and you spend every weekend scouting, or it's hard if you have a second job and you work whatever it is, however many hours a week. In order for you to, buy a piece of, like, it's all hard no matter what.
Well, that's just it. It's like, I mean, just what you were saying previously about your season last year, man. It's like you work, dude. Like you're like one of the hardest workers I know. You know what I mean?
Appreciate
like there's no moss gathering under your feet, my friend. You know what I mean? Like, like that's just kind of how I think of you, and it does become a limiting factor, right? Because you're a motivated guy, like in business and, in entrepreneurial spirit and, and want to be successful, not just in hunting, but in life and things in general, right? And so there's this constant kind of balancing act you have to play, right? And which makes it incredible. Like it makes it that much harder. So you live in Illinois, which is, let's just say a better hunting state than Pennsylvania, right?
I would agree. Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to always have the best success versus someone in PA because your time is often your limiting factor. You know what I mean? Where it's like
time and focus too. Yeah.
Time and focus. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, these things, like all these things aren't created equal. And just because someone has access to something doesn't mean it becomes a turnkey opportunity for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was stoked to see you, to kill your buck on this piece of dirt. I'm hoping one day I can have that feeling. Like that's like, even though I love hunting public land and stuff like that, like there is a part of me that, does want to at some point, have a piece that I can kind of control and try. Cause I used to do some like work on my, father-in-law's farm. He's got 280 acres. It's just a long drive for me to help him like to go do anything that. And just honestly, like it's in an area that just doesn't produce very good deer. So even though the amount of work you would do on it, you're never going to have the quality of hunting that I would like to have. Like I can get better on public, if I could get it just to match it, I would be down. It would be, a worthwhile effort for me, but my hope is that someday that I can do that because I do enjoy getting my hands in the dirt. And there is something satisfying, like even whenever I was helping him do stuff on that farm of like, working and putting in plots and doing some like timber stand improvement and stuff like that. And then having to sit and like seeing the deer use it the way I intended it to be used.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh shit, man, it worked. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and to your point, like what you were saying was exactly what happened. Like we did a bunch of work the first year and all of a sudden, like we had more good bucks on that property than he had seen in like 10 years. Right. And it was literally the first year. And I went in and kind of strategically hunted it, like, archery hunted it and stuff like that. I didn't kill anything on it that year. And, him and his buddies went in, they went in for gun season and literally like 6 guys killed like the 6 best bucks that were on the property.
Bango right there. Yep.
Like literally like all the, like if, and there was probably only 1 or 2 that I would have killed, and then the rest of them were kind of like what I referred to as like, those are good deer. They're up and comers. If the neighbors don't kill them, we can let them go. Like we're going to have like 3-4 good bucks next year to chase. You know what I mean? That'll all be, and every one of them got killed. And then it was just like the next year, it's like, what I heard was like, we're not seeing any good bucks. And I'm like, well, yeah, like you just killed all the ones that were in the neighborhood that were using your farm last year. Like you're not going to, it's and that was kind of like why I stopped. Cause I was like, all right, like, I'm doing a lot of work and they're just and like good for them. That's how they want to hunt it.
We're 3 years out now.
Yeah. And then it got hit really bad with CWD and it's just like a bunch of like compounding factors. And so it's like, it went from like, it could be good to like, they killed a lot of the promising deer. And then like CWD came in and it was like, boom. Now it's like almost like a ghost town and it's unfortunate, Yeah. But anyway, so you kill this buck in Illinois, right? And so
November
now
3rd,
you're November 3rd, which is like the magic day.
Dude, it's weird. November 3rd and November 10th. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I mean, the weather wasn't really that great or anything else. There's just a little magic on November 3rd. I don't care what it is, and if that's just my perception, I'm willing to be a little bit more aggressive because of that. It's working, so I just like November 3rd.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going back to. So now your focus is all turned back to Iowa at this point, right? Because you've filled your tag in Illinois, and now it's time to. You got the coveted Iowa tag still in your pocket. It's now, game face on, game time. Got to make it happen. So what are you thinking now headed back to Iowa?
So shot that deer Friday night, got him Saturday morning, and then Sunday it was, 75 degrees or something crazy. So I hung around that day, just got caught up on some stuff. And then I was like, do I drive tonight? And I'm a morning person more than a night person. It's like, I don't want to get there, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'd just rather wait till tomorrow morning. So I drove, now it's November 6th. And actually on November 5th, so this is something I've seen, and it's hard to really explain it for someone to understand, and maybe someone can connect the dots with what I'm trying to say. Let's say scrape week buck shows up. The first time he shows up, I've always said like the first 5-6 days of November is going to be one of the best opportunities to kill that deer while he's looking for his first doe. I've just seen it, and I only usually see it out of all the different cameras I run on all the different farms. Like there's only a couple that actually follow this pattern, but nonetheless, I do see that pattern, and I don't know what that is, but there's starting to become some level of pattern recognition. So we got a picture of that deer on the 22nd. We had no other pictures. I had no personal sightings of him. When I was out there, boom, November 5th, he shows up. boom, I'm in the truck November 6th, driving out there. And I was going to go anyways. And so it was another really hot day. I drive straight to the farm, and is, I don't know, 2 o'clock or so. And backing up to the summer with how kind of, I mean, this farm is really cool. It's a 240 something with really probably 30 acres of woods or timber, and they're just draws. And so one of them, there's this Y, and it just there's one where it's really, really tight, like through here. I'm like, oh, dude, that just looks awesome. The first time I ever looked at it on the map, and then we went and looked at it, like, this is freaking awesome. And so I haven't even really hunted that particular pinch because there wasn't a lot of sign per se, but the sign was close. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go do a hanging hunt here. I got a perfect wind to have it shooting this creek drainage, and I should be bulletproof. There's food here. However, this is important because I know during that time period people don't typically want to hunt food. However, if that food is along a travel corridor, along thick cover, along bed, that's where you can't just say, I'm going to hunt food because people say not to hunt food. It has to be extra layers to your thought process. And so this one had a good travel corridor. It was thick and nasty. And it just so happened to be that there was some food there. And so, even you take the food out of the equation there, probably still would have hunted there. So with just how you can manipulate the wind. And so got straight up the tree. And so this is my first deer ever out of the saddle too. So I've spent some time in the saddle, but I was like, oh man, it's pretty sweet.
Nice.
A lot of people love them. I was like, yeah, man, I was set up in 7 minutes straight up the tree ready to go.
Nice.
And so that was cool. And so I ended up seeing this. I still don't know because it was so thick through there. I did see a buck, and I tried grunting at him, and you could tell he was on a different type of mission, and he went and worked a scrape, and he just stared off in the distance. And I'm like, okay, well, it's 4:30. Whatever that buck is, I bet I'm going to end up at least seeing him again to understand who he was. And it was probably about 5 o'clock or so. A lone doe comes out, the food plot, and I'm like, okay, this is all right. This is kind of what the script's starting to write itself here. All right. And meanwhile, when I got set up here, we pre-trimmed this tree in early October, and so I hadn't even really spent much time there. It was just geographically and the topography of it, this looked awesome. And as I got set up, I'm like, oh, there's a scrape, there's a giant rub, there is an absolute cow path coming through here. So this is really good. And It's like you kind of knew it should be like that, but you're just kind of assuming. And sure enough, that deer comes kind of working from the same direction where I saw him work that scrape and ended up coming through. And it's kind of funny because your expectations are, whatever you set them in Iowa. And the first thing I saw, this deer has short G4s, and and his tines go in. And as he's coming in, I'm like, I didn't even grab my bow. That's how dumb I am.
Wow.
Because
that could have been catastrophe, man.
Yeah, I know. I just saw his G4s, and I'm like, those are like 1.5 inch G4s. Like, that's not it. And then, because his tines go in so much, they don't look as tall as what they really are. And then he ended up looking
square at me. Because when you're thinking of that quintessential Iowa hammer, you're thinking boom, big spread, framey, you know what I mean, is kind of what you're thinking, in your mind, you know what I mean? Yeah, well, I knew he was tighter because we had pictures of him, but I didn't realize, for whatever reason, my eyes just went straight to the G4s, not the 5-inch bases or, 11. Right, because when I saw that deer, you referred to him as sneaky big. I was like, dude, there ain't nothing sneaky about that deer.
Well, that was just my experience because I was like,
right. Well, I get it because you're from the tree, into you, it kind of snuck up on you because you were like, I don't know,
And the first impression is the 4s, and then I saw his left side, and his left G3 just comes in so at a weird angle, and so it doesn't look very tall. And then he turned in, I just saw it was with super mass. I was like, oh dang, that's him.
Yeah, because his mass carries all the way through, man. It's just that was he's just so stinking heavy. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, yep, all right, it's happening. So you get I'm getting ready, and I prearranged everything to where I anticipated them to come through, and it was 23 yards. And he stopped by himself, and I'm actually at full draw there, and it was just too tight. I was like, I'm not taking the shot, and so he ends up walking down. I go back down, and then he is in this creek ditch bottom, and I'm like, okay, hopefully he ends up coming back, but he was quartering back north, and I'm like, all right, I think he's just gonna work that way. So he started to walk away, and I had dinner with the Whitetail Cribs guest Roger Sapper, and I was just we were just talking deer as most of the time I do.
Right.
And I was just talking to him, and I don't know how it came up, but he's like, I've never snort wheezed in a mature deer. He's like, really? You never have? And I was like, I'm not lying to you. I really haven't.
Right.
Like, oh, you got to try to snort wheeze. And I'm like, really? And he's like, definitely. And so that deer, and that's in the back of my mind here because he's about to move away and I freaking snort wheeze at him. And he ends up going away and it's, it goes a minute goes by, and that creek bottom, you couldn't hear him move. It was really quiet and very calm. So you could hear everything crunch besides the creek ditch. And so he goes off, and then a minute later, he just came in so mad. It was just like everything you could ever imagine for an Iowa hunt is exactly what happened. It was like a snort wheeze at him. I assume he got all mad and worked a scrape or hit a rub, and he came back in to whoop some tail. And he came back up, and I shot him at like 18 yards. And it was pretty bizarre. I hit him, and he ran probably 15 yards. And this is really thick here, and he just lets out a roar. And I'm like, what in the world? And then he runs 30 yards and crashes, dumps over, like doesn't bed down. He crashes over. And I'm like, okay, I got him. Sweet, awesome. But then I still his head was still moving around. I was like, okay, this is not good. This is not good. He said, this is not what we want here. And it was a deal where his head would lean back and it would lay down. I was like, okay, he's fatally hit for sure.
Right.
But he was more alert than he was woozy. And so now I'm watching this deer all the way till dark. And I can still see he's alive or attentive enough. And he's like 40 yards from me. But I can't see where I hit him. All I can see is his head. And so now it's getting dark, and it's past shooting light now. And so all right, well, I literally told myself I'll sleep in the blind, or in the saddle. I don't care. I'll just put my lineman's bell, sit right on the platform. I got nothing else to do. This is what I'm here for.
Right.
I got nothing else.
I love it.
And so I was mentally prepared to do that, honestly.
Right.
And it was about 7 o'clock. I hear him actually get up, moving really slow. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And he ended up moving really slow. And then I could just hear him just working through there, laboring to move. He got back to the same creek ditch where I ended up shooting him. And then I heard him end up, getting out of the creek ditch. And then I could, he went north. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to get down and get out of there. Because I had this, when he was bedded down, of course it was dead calm. And then once it got pitch black, the wind started to pick up again. And of course my thermals are going right to him. So I had this conundrum. If I get down, I'm going to bump him. If, hopefully he dies or is not, doesn't have enough wits to smell me and he expires there. So I don't know. I would have to assume he ended up catching my scent is what happened.
And that was why he got up and was like, all right, I got to move a little bit. You know?
And he moved into the wind. And so that's what happened there. So we ended up just giving him a bunch of time. And then we ended up, with how predictable the farm was, he actually stopped bleeding. And we just were able to glass him and then put a final one into him, which is always not the most fun experience, but glad it all worked out. But it was just one of those deals where punched the diaphragm, caught one lung, and these animals just have so much adrenaline and the will to survive. And it's just, it's like you can go back and say, did I, mis-execute the shot? Did he drop, 2 inches with the shot? I mean, I don't know. It all happened, pretty fast, but it's like, you don't like when it happens, but you're happy that you're able to get it done.
It's bow hunting, right? It's like, and their will to live is just incredible. That's especially like out there. Like, I don't know, I've never hunted Illinois, so I can't speak for that area, but I've never seen like deer have the will to live like I've seen like with Iowa deer and Kansas deer during that time of year. Like, like the one I shot in Iowa, like, I mean, it was like, you couldn't have made a better shot, in hindsight, like, cause the way he walked off, like, I was worried that I had a bad hit, like cause he jumped and mule kicked and he stopped and he just started walking. I mean, I knew he was hurt because he tucked his tail and he was kind of hunched up walking away. So I knew I hit him hard, but like, I expected it to be like a freak out, and just like him just run off and like dump over. Like, that's how good
legged and fall over.
Yeah. That's how good I felt about the shot, and I mean, in hindsight, like, he only walked off like 60 yards maybe and went and laid down. And I just stayed in my tree for like whatever it was, like an hour until I got down. And he was dead whenever I walked up on him. But like the fact that it was like, I expected like a crash, Like, but he just walked off and just like went and laid down, And that was just, and then the one I killed in Kansas was like a freaking rodeo. Very similar to kind of like what you had happen, where it was just like, dude did not want to die.
Don't,
I mean, he was going to.
Yeah. They just do not accept defeat. as
Yeah.
I mean, and their adrenaline just gets running, which is crazy. Which is
Right.
You know, maybe that's why they're so fun to hunt them, because they love to live so much.
Yeah.
Like, not to be weird or sound crazy, but
Right.
I mean, if they were just like, shoot me, you know, how fun would that be?
Right. Especially when you get those mature deer where it's just like, you know, they're just a different beast, man. Like, you know, like they're just a different, you know, animal when you hunt that caliber and like that age class of deer. It's just different. You know, they act different. They don't make many mistakes. You know, you don't get a window into their life very often to like really truly understand. I mean, a few guys have, like when you think about a Don Higgins and like the caliber of deer he's been killing for years, it's like Don's got a pretty good idea, you know, how
Got
those
figured out.
Yeah, how those deer behave, you know. And there's other guys, you know, he's not the only one, but he's the first one that comes to mind. But I certainly haven't had enough encounters with mature deer of like that type of caliber to where I'm like, yeah, I got this figured out. Like I know what they do. It's like, no, I've got little glimpses, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of like, I understand little pieces of it, but man,
You
they
know
still
the picture of the puzzle, but you're missing 90% of the pieces.
Yeah, and that's what brings me back. You know what I mean? That's what brings me like that. I mean, truthfully, it's like that's why I travel a lot, you know, because I do want to see how they live and encounter them more often and understand their world a little bit better. And because like I don't know if you feel this way or not, but I feel like the more I get to spend time with like truly mature deer, that I'm often surprised by actually how they behave. Like they don't behave the way I would how I
What do you mean by that?
thought. So I feel like there are times where they're way, way more predictable than we think. Like that's been my experience. Like, you know, and I can only speak to like two primary experiences, being like one being Iowa and one being Kansas, because I've had so many like mature deer encounters in those two places. And I do think it's sometimes environmental as well, you know, because the deer that I killed in Kansas, like it was his predictability that got him killed, you know, and which is crazy to say because I killed him on the 7th. Like that's like rut, man. Like that's when people think they're the least predictable, right? But I did that session with Bronson Strickland, talking about deer bedding, right? And deer bedding between rut and early season, and how they're way more predictable in their bedding patterns like during the rut than they actually are during October. Balloons came back again. I don't know what the hell's happening here.
They love that.
Yeah. It's only on my screen. It's not on Jake's screen, so I don't know what's happening here. Maybe I'm just saying some really cool shit. I don't know.
I think so. Bravo.
But so that was kind of in my mind, like on that hunt, and ultimately that's what got that deer killed. Because what I've seen out there a lot is that those mature deer, I think when we think about mature deer, it's like, you know, we sometimes like group like the 3.5. Some people will group like the 3.5-year-olds in because that might be the most mature for the area. Like, so for me, for example, like where I live in PA, 3.5-year-old deer is probably on the older end. You'll get a 4.5 once in a while. Now, when I go up to the North Piece, there are 4.5, 5.5, and I even had one on camera this year that I know to be 6. You know what I mean? So you do get more, you know, more age on that piece. But when I say mature, I'm saying like the 4.5 and up, right? And they just act a little different. And what I kind of noticed was like when you get into this time frame, like that, you know, 6th, 7th, you know, maybe even 3rd through like the 6th, 7th, like I found them to be predictable because they are not, those older bucks aren't running does hard. They're hanging out being their bodyguard. And the younger bucks are usually the ones who are acting a fool, trying to like cut those out because the party hadn't started yet, you know?
Yep.
And like, I can almost tell how they act now out there, at least, especially because of glassing, that if I see a couple deer out somewhere and I'm watching them, I can quickly tell, even if I can't see their racks and stuff like that, if I can just watching how they're behaving with the other deer, I can tell which one is the older deer, you know, because he's usually the one that's going to try to run somebody off and he's going to stay within 40, 50 yards of those does. And he's just going to follow them around. Isn't going to push them. He's just going to protect his girls essentially and be their bodyguard, you know?
Yeah.
And wherever she wants to go is where he's going to go. She's leading the party, you know, until it's time to breed. Then he will get aggressive, cut her out, because I'll usually see them with 2 or 3 does and he's just ushering the group around, you know? And I've seen that the past couple years. And that was how I killed that deer, was like, he was with 2 does. He bumped off a buck the night before and then cut her off into a CRP field, you know, where I knew they were probably bedded. And I was like, he's going to follow her back out tomorrow night, the same spot, because she wants to bed there and then she wants to feed there. It's like, so he's going to bed with her. And that's exactly what happened. And so in that, it's like, understanding that they're just more predictable than I had previously thought. It's, like, and it almost kind of goes with the same thing, how like you'll hear these guys that kill big deer all the time say like, as they get older, their core area shrinks, oftentimes, not every one of them, but oftentimes. Right. Mm-hmm. And like, they get more predictable, but the area in which you're going to define them is that much smaller, and so it becomes harder to kind of pinpoint.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
what they're going to be.
If you're not in his core area, then,
you're either in the game 100% or you're like nowhere close. You know what I mean? And so that's what I mean by like, that they do things that I wouldn't have anticipated. Like I would have thought they would have been way more or way less predictable than they actually are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that, and I think maybe a lot of that's rooted to us trying to make it more complicated than what it is too.
I think so. You know what I mean? It's like, don't make it harder than it needs to be. You know what I mean? It's like they'll give you a script if you're willing to read it. You just got to be willing to kill them where they want to be killed. Not where you want to kill them. Type of thing. That's
such a key thing. That is such a key thing for sure, man. And I don't know. I think everyone probably goes through the process of overthinking things, and then they hopefully a couple things click, and that's where a lot of it's just. My whole goal was just to keep it really simple and just follow my gut feeling, because like I've hunted for a long time. I'm not saying I'm any better than anyone else, but you do kind of refine your own gut feeling over time based off information, and I think it's just honestly your deer subconscious in reality.
Yeah, exactly. Well, man, I was super stoked for you, dude. You got a $2 season. You're back on the board. You're back as the Exodus killer, leading the charge. What's the plans for the rest of the year? You got another Illinois tag yet?
Yeah, I do. I have a lot of work to catch up on, so I'll say that. I have a lot of work to catch up on, so that'd be the biggest thing here now. So,
right.
Couple deer that I would plan on hunting, but nothing real crazy, and just going to take what the season gives me. I think I'm not going to be greedy by any means. I think I had an excellent season, and just have fun, and sneak out when I can, and keep tabs on some deer and get some historical data for next year as well. So I mean, there's plenty to be done, and a lot of fun things here. So that's the plan. But I'm also with your comment of making a plan for the following year. That crossed my mind as I was driving home from Iowa, knowing
literally,
man, it's going to be 6 more years before I get to come back and do this. And I'm like, and so that's kind of actually in the back of my mind, like laying out couple of different plans that I have in my brain of what to possibly do, because I do think there is a lot of fun. Obviously, Illinois is not what it used to be, but it's still okay or above average or however you want to say it. But there is a lot of fun to go and just leave all of this alone and just behind, and just go cut your teeth on something different and have some fun. And whether that's 7 days or whatever it is, or 5 days, I do think there's a lot of fun with that. Obviously, now I have that perception from Iowa, so when I go somewhere else, it might be a different opinion. But that's in the back of my mind.
Come to Pennsylvania, buddy. We'll
Aaron keeps trying to get me to go, and I just tell him no.
Right?
He's like, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, look. There's definitely some places where you can get into some good deer, but it's not, on short time. It would be extremely hard, right? And if I'm going to spend my time going somewhere, it's like I just want to see. And if I don't live here, it's like I just want to see deer. You know what I mean? I want to be around deer, and I want to have some fun. And it's tough state to hunt. But it's getting better. I will say that. Like
it definitely seems like that. Yeah, I've definitely taken notice of that. I bet you there's some pockets of Pennsylvania that's better than some pockets in Illinois. I really do think that. I don't know if it'd be as easy to kill, but as far as age class, I would definitely say yes.
Yeah, there's some places, like I was saying, like some of the newer spots that I've kind of tabbed the past few years, like age class I'm seeing is like, it's right, and there's caliber of deer there where it's like, I've found a couple where it's like anyone would be willing to kill from any state, like, that would be on their list, maybe not for like a Drury farm or whatever, right? But like, guys who are just normal hunting access, whether they have a farm or they're hunting public land or whatever, they're not managing like hardcore, right? Like they would stick an arrow in a couple of these. I have no doubt. But to your point, it's just, that's also on a tract of land that is like very, very large. And so finding exactly where they're at is like the hard part, right? Like
knowing
I know they're
there isn't hard, but killing them is the hard part.
Right, exactly. But cool, man. Well, I've kept you on here for about an hour, buddy. I want to be sensitive to your time because I know you got a lot of work to get to since you were off gallivanting in Iowa, living the dream. But before I let you get going, let people know where they can find out more about you, where they can find out what Exodus has going on for the upcoming kind of holiday season and things of that nature.
Yeah. When is this going live?
This will go live probably the week, 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I think is when it would go live.
All right. Because I was going to say, well, if you listen to this now, the Black Friday savings is probably gone. But but go sign up. Go to ExodusOutdoorGear.com and check out all of our cameras and arrows and everything else we have going on. We have a bunch of content on there. Our YouTube channel, Exodus Outdoor Gear. We have Whitetail Cribs. We have podcasts as well and all sorts of different great content. And then if you want to see me post maybe once a year on Instagram, you can follow me at Jake Hofer, or check out the Land Podcast where we talk about buying land and all the fun things that go along with that.
Yep. And you guys are always at the Harrisburg show. We'll just mention that. That's, that'll be in a couple months, but you guys are always there. I come into the booth for like a day or two. Yeah. And so if you guys are planning to head to that show, like swing by and talk deer with us and get the stories live and chop it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on. Congratulations for you and your season too. That's awesome. I was excited for you. And so it was fun to get on here and jam.
That's right, man. I appreciate you, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you would do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.